Hi everyone, I'm Any New Province, and this week we're playing Mad Stompy for Net Benefits, the series where we explore the benefits of net decking in Pauper. Mad Stompy is an innovative take on the mono-green Stompy archetype that Magic Online user Patrick J took to a top 16 finish in a recent Pauper challenge. Instead of playing things like Solana Ledgewalker, Nest Invader, or Burning Tree Emissary, they've decided to include Wild Mongrel, Basking Rootwalla, and one copy of Bone Splitter. So congratulations to Patrick J on their finish in the Pauper challenge. I can't wait to see how their variation on mono green Stompy does for me. Before I get into the deck tech, I just want to let you know that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Alright, let's have a look at Mad Stompy. First we have Basking Rootwalla, which is what makes this deck mad. Basking Rootwalla costs 1 green for a 1/1, and you can pay 1 and a green to give Basking Rootwalla +2/+2 until end of turn. You can only activate this ability once each turn. The most interesting thing about Basking Rootwalla, however, is its madness ability. Its madness cost is 0, and if you discard this card, you discard it into exile. When you do, you can cast it for its madness cost, which is 0, or put it into your graveyard. Now, normally Stompy wouldn't have the ability to take advantage of madness. However, Patrick J is using Wild Mongrel to get just the right effect out of Basking Rootwalla. Wild Mongrel costs 1 and a green and allows you to discard a card to give it +1/+1 and make it the color of your choice until end of turn. Usually it's a 2/2. Playing a deck with as much pressure as Stompy, you don't even have to discard a Basking Rootwalla and cast it for its madness cost to get the full value out of Wild Mongrel. Sometimes your opponent's life total is so low that you don't care about pitching the last 3 cards in your hand to just win the game right there. While Patrick J isn't playing things like Solana Ledgewalker, they did include some of the classic utility creatures we'd expect to see in Stompy lists. Our first utility creature is River Boa. It costs 1 and a green for a 2/1 with Island Walk, which is sweet because islands are pretty popular in Pauper. Island Walk means that River Boa can't be blocked as long as defending player controls an island, but the best part about River Boa, besides hosing Delver decks, is that you can pay 1 green to regenerate it. Being able to regenerate River Boa is amazing. It can fog your opponent's removal, and it can allow you to attack with the River Boa over and over again so long as you have a little bit of green mana to spare. Next we have Vault Scourge, which is very powerful, very useful, and is technically a 1-drop. It costs 1 generic mana and 1 black Phyrexian mana, which we will always pay 2 life for a 1/1 flyer with lifelink. Because our plan is not to disrupt our opponent but to race them, the extra points of life you gain off Vault Scourge are very useful. We definitely want to get at least 2 back for the life that we paid to cast the Vault Scourge, but any extra life is just gravy and great. Finally, we have Quirion Ranger, which costs 1 green mana for a 1/1 that allows you to return a forest you control to its owner's hand. That lets you untap target creature. You can only activate this ability once each turn. Not only does Quirion Ranger give our creatures a kind of pseudo-vigilance ability, it also allows us to cheat on our mana because we can tap a forest, return it to our hand, use it to make our land drop, tap it again, and cast our 2-drops with it. Like any Stompy deck, Patrick J has a ton of powerful 1-drops. We're trying to use as many 2-powered 1-drops as possible to get our opponent's life total to 0 as quick as we can. First, we have Nettle Sentinel. It costs 1 green mana for a 2/2 that doesn't untap during your untap step. That sounds kind of bad, but it's okay. Whenever you cast a green spell, you may untap Nettle Sentinel. We can untap it with our Quirion Ranger too. Next up is, in my opinion, one of the scariest creatures you can find in a mono-green Stompy list. This is Skargan Pitskulk. It costs 1 green for a 1/1 with Bloodthirst 1. What that means is, if an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. Also, creatures with power less than Skargan Pitskulk's power can't block it. An unblockable 2/2 is sometimes scary enough on its own, but we can plan on having Skargan Pitskulk get even bigger with the rest of the spells in our deck. Your opponent usually has to find a spot removal spell to take care of it, but in the meantime, they're not taking care of any of your other threats. Finally, we have Young Wolf, which is a powerful 1-drop and a utility creature. It costs 1 green mana for a 1/1 with Undying, which means when this creature dies, if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. While While on its front side, Young Wolf isn't as powerful as our other 1-drops, it does come back as a 2/2 and can eat our opponent's removal spells, making it just good enough to make the cut in the main deck of lots of Stompy decks. I mentioned that we were going to make our Skargan Pitskulk a lot bigger than a 2/2 most of the time, and these are the spells that we're going to use to do exactly that. This package starts off with Groundswell. Groundswell costs 1 green mana for an instant that gives target creature +2/+2 until end of turn, which isn't that exciting, but it has the landfall ability, which means if you had a land enter the battlefield under your control this turn, Groundswell gives the creature +4/+4 until end of turn instead. While it will be online a little less often without Nest Invaders in our deck, we're still running a copy of Hunger of the Howl pack. It costs 1 green mana for an instant that puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Like Groundswell, it's pretty unexciting on the front side, but Hunger of the Howl pack has the Morbid ability. Morbid says put 3 +1/+1 counters on that creature instead if a creature died this turn. This combat trick is absolutely insane. If you can somehow orchestrate a way for a creature to die before combat, when your opponent goes to block, so you can immediately blow them out with a Hunger. Next up is Rancor, one of the best pump spells in the entire format. It costs 1 green mana for an enchantment aura that gives enchanted creature +2/+0 and trample. That really is pretty good on its own, but what makes Rancor so good is its second ability, which says when Rancor is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return Rancor to its owner's hand. A creature with a Rancor on it knows nothing but fighting, so while they're serving and trading off, we'll keep getting the Rancor back to put on new creatures to keep the pressure on our opponent up. Finally, we have 1 copy of Bone Splitter, every Pauper player's favorite equipment. It costs 1 generic mana for an artifact equipment that gives equipped creature +2/+0. You can equip it to a creature for 1 mana. While the rest of our non-land cards are all sort of pump spells, I also see them as Stompy's way to interact with the opponent. First, we have Mutagenic Growth. Mutagenic Growth costs 1 green Phyrexian mana, which means we can pay green mana or 2 life for it, and it gives target creature +2/+2 until end of turn at instant speed. While we can use this while we're going all in on a single turn with our pump spells to win the game, Mutagenic Growth is often used when you're tapped out and your opponent points a lightning bolt at one of your 2/2s. The Mutagenic Growth is effectively a counterspell at that point. Next, we have Epic Confrontation, our only true piece of main deck interaction. Epic Confrontation costs 1 and a green for a sorcery that gives target creature you control +1/+2 until end of turn. It then fights target creature you don't control. Yep, pretty straightforward. Make your creature huge, get it to punch a dinosaur in the face, swing at your opponent for lethal. Our last non-land card is one of the most important cards in any mono green Stompy build, and it's Vines of Vastwood. It costs 1 green mana for an instant with Kicker Green, which means you may pay an additional green mana as you cast this spell. It gives target creature +4/+4 until end of turn if it was kicked, and target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control this turn. If we're low on threats, Vines of the Vastwood can protect our threats just fine for a single green mana, but if we've got lots of threats and we're going wide, a kicked Vines of the Vastwood can just straight up end the game. Alright, let's have a look at this mana base. Nice and simple, just 17 basic forests, all untapped to hit our creatures on time, and only 17 because Quirion Ranger is going to help us get to 2 mana whenever we need it. Alright, let's have a look at this sideboard. We have 2 copies of Gutshot for killing fairies or tireless tribes. We have 2 copies of Natural State for destroying artifact lands or Journey to Nowheres. We have 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus for controlling the graveyards of Gurmag Angler decks or decks that have Chainer's Edicts in their graveyard. We have 4 copies of Gleeful Sabotage, which is going to blow up a lot more artifacts and enchantments than Natural State will when we need them to. We have 2 Epic Confrontation when our opponent has some troublesome creatures we have to deal with, and we have 3 Scattershot Archers for untapping with our Quirion Rangers to completely wrath the board of flyers. And there you have it, Mad Stompy by Patrick J. Congratulations again on your finish in the Pauper Challenge with this deck. So my streaming schedule is changing a little bit. Normally I would say we're going to take this deck into a league on Monday. However, Net Benefits is now going to take place on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Atlantic time, so drop in there every week to see us playing competitive Pauper decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Wednesday night.